How can a nonprofit raise more from the right funders without obnoxiously hounding them? What a concept, right? Our guest knows what it's like to struggle with fundraising, which is why she solved that problem and has trained over 20,000 nonprofit leaders to love the fundraising process. Oh my gosh, we're going to have a delicious conversation today. Stay tuned for the Startup Life Live show. Let's glow, everyone. Mwah. Hello and welcome to the Startup Life Live show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I kind of got a good idea of what y'all are crawling through every single day, navigating those murky waters and the high levels of uncertainty. Oh my gosh. Can I just say right now, yay you founders. This is also why I'm grateful for you tuning in to the show, because this is a way to level up your founder journey. And as you, the founder, does better, that's right, your business will do better too. So a big yoo-hoo, hey, live viewers, I'm so happy that you're tuning in. And to the wonderful replay viewers and podcast listeners, I'm so grateful for your time and presence. I know you are going to find the gems you need from our conversation today with our amazing guest. So I just want to remind everybody that wherever you're watching this show, please be sure to click on the like button. That'll help us reach more folks. And if you are tuning in from YouTube, I would be so grateful if you clicked on that subscribe button and maybe even that notification button. It really does help us reach more folks. So thank you for that. And if you'd like to receive a post and an alert whenever I post a new show, please join the meetup group. Here, you're going to get a deep dive. You're going to see the big write-up about our guest, and he or she, them, could probably be in an area or talking about something that might help you with your business. But also, it's great to swing by and cheer on another founder, right? So important. So let me just share a few Andelicious announcements with you. As always, I love to start off with Arlen's Academy. Come on, guys, this is free. Hop on over to Arlen's Academy. She's always adding more topics, more information that all founders need to succeed. It will benefit your business in a heartbeat. And then I want to talk a little bit more about Scroobius, because I've got to tell you, this platform really does help you and prepare you to raise capital. All right. So from every single nut and bolt, and it is so affordable. So I invite you to go check out Scroobius. And should you check out and want to join the program, use Ande15 when you check out. That's my promo code, and you'll receive 15% off first tier pricing. Okay, so that's a wonderful benefit for founders everywhere. And they'll help you create a video pitch deck. So to me, that is just sweet. And I want to also share the Founder University. This is a 12-week course to build an MVP and get your first users. It's about $750, but I got to tell you, if you complete and show up every single week and actually have an MVP at the end of the 12 weeks, they will give you your money back. Seriously, guaranteed. And then one last little goodie before I go and introduce our guest. If you're raising a seed fund, please check out Elizabeth Yin. Her document here, How to Raise a Seed Round. Oh my gosh, amazing information. I'll have the link in the show notes, but it's basically bit.ly/AA Elizabeth Yin. And this is just a tremendous resource if you're raising that seed round, that important seed round to keep you going and floating forward. All right, now I get to do the fun part. Let's go and introduce our amazing guest, the one, the only Mallory Erickson. Yes, that's right. As a former executive director for a $3 million nonprofit, which she grew from 300,000, Mallory deeply understands the nonprofit Funding Hustle, an outstanding problem solver, executive coach, fundraising consultant, and host of the podcast, What the Fundraising? Mallory created the Power Partners formula, which provides unique tools to help nonprofits fundraise more from foundations, corporate partners, and individuals. As I said earlier, she has trained over 20,000 fundraisers using her unique win-win framework. Please join me in welcoming Mallory Erickson to the show. Oh my God.
Thank you for having me. So excited for this conversation.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here, Mallory. Where are you hailing from?
I am in Berkeley, California.
Excellent. So I'm waving to you from Boston. And I also wanted to say that, I think you were here. Did you come here for a while? I noticed that you had some degree from one of our local establishments.
Yes. Yeah. So I was actually born in Boston and then grew up though in California and went back to Boston for a year of undergraduate at BU, ended up transferring to Michigan, but then came back for graduate school, lived there for a number of years, really started my nonprofit journey at Citizen Schools, which is right in Children's Wharf. So Boston is my other home.
Oh my gosh. I love that we have that in common. Hooray. So folks, tuning in, those of you who are tuning in, I want to remind you to amplify your brand. You don't know who's going to be tuning in. The podcast gets hundreds of downloads. The replay videos on YouTube get thousands. So you could actually reach somebody by sharing your brand, your one-liner, website URL, and while we're live here. So please take that opportunity. And of course, Mallory and I will celebrate you. And if you have any questions for Mallory or for me, pop them into the comment section. We want to know, we want to hear from you. Right, Mallory?
Yes, please.
Yay, yay,
and hi,
yay.
Ruth.
And Ruth. Ruth is the Startup Life Live community manager. She welcomes everybody to the live show and makes them all feel at home and shares links and everything. I'm so grateful to have her. So Mallory, let's dive into, how did this happen? Because there you were, you're an executive director for a $3 million nonprofit. So, and you had grown it, you'd really had stake in that. What made you just go, nope, I think I'm going to go out on my own? Was it, had you had entrepreneurs in your life that cheered you on, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, well, I'm the daughter of an entrepreneur, which I actually never really talk about, but that has been my dad's journey as well. Although I will say that I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, or that wasn't an identity that I thought I would adopt at any point in my life. Although looking back, I see all the little businesses I started when I was 7 and 9 and 12.
Like what?
Well, I created a babysitting call book. You remember how you used to have the phone books for like schools? So I collected all the different babysitters in our area and then sold the books of the kind of babysitter phone book. I did all the typical lemonade stand. I think one time I convinced my parents to let me mow, that I was going to start a lawn mowing business, but I was not allowed to use a lawnmower. So I tried to do it with scissors. That one, there was not a good ROI per hour on that time investment. And so that one didn't really take off. But I was always kind of coming up with creative and innovative ways to stay active.
Everybody, can you hold that image, right, of the scissors and the lawn? Oh,
it was not even. It was a pretty good hack job. So yeah, I've had some startup fails, you could say.
That's great. But you had the hustle in you. So that you're transitioning, from what you were doing into helping others do something that's so hard. Really, it's challenging, right? The fundraising process. And you learned a lot from that. But I just want to say, speaking of fundraising, do you know the folks at We Are Eiffel? This is the International Foundation Entrepreneurship Leadership. I think I've got that right, Julia. Did I get it all out? Run by Jill Johnson, but Julia takes care of all their events. Yay, Julia. And so I encourage everyone to check out this amazing nonprofit. And it's been around for like 20 years or more. really making a difference, especially for our underserved folks in the nonprofit world. So everybody, you may remember, I had Jill Johnson on the show a few weeks ago, or maybe last month. And she just shared some great information. So I wanted to do a quick shout out to them. So when you went to transition out of your wonderful gig as an executive director, how did that happen? Because, the ideas come to us. Sometimes it's a life event. Sometimes we get let go. Sometimes things happen. What was it for you that had you going, nope, I'm going to hang out my shingle and this is how I'm going to do it?
Yeah, so it was a series of a few different events. I mean, one was that while I was having fundraising success in terms of the growth, I was really frustrated and I wasn't feeling good in that fundraising role. So I was raising more money, but it still felt really uncomfortable. And I didn't feel like I was able to show up sort of as my true self in those different roles. And I figured that good fundraisers didn't feel as uncomfortable as I felt. I was like, oh, I must be bad at this because I'm so uncomfortable with this part of my job. So I was like, I think maybe, I had become an accidental fundraiser, just getting promoted up through the nonprofit, different nonprofit organizations. And then once you find yourself in some of those higher roles, like a managing director, executive director, they come with fundraising responsibilities. So I was sort of like, okay, like here I am at the top of this, of this sort of sector's pinnacle. And I really dislike one of the biggest elements that comes with it. So I was like, maybe it's time for me to leave the nonprofit sector. And I was burning out. I was dealing with chronic pain. There were just all these elements that just weren't working. So I ended up firing myself from the executive director role, from the head role. And I went down to 25 hours a week, but I said I was going to stick with strategic partnerships because I knew the only way to make it work was for me. I was seeing so much success fundraising was to keep fundraising. And so I ended up going and getting executive coach certified. I also got trained in habit and behavior change and design thinking. Those were not actually connected at the time to my fundraising. They were
what is design thinking, like human design thinking?
Yeah. So design thinking, there's a company called IDEO, and it's really sort of like, it's a different framework for creating products and models really that leverages and uses an empathy lens. And you sort of design for outlier situations in a problem you're trying to solve, and it ends up sort of capturing the middle when you do that. If anyone wants to check out IDEO, they're an incredible firm. And the organization I was working for had some partnerships with them. So I ended up getting this training. And those frameworks, what ended up happening is that as I'm learning all these executive coaching tools and all these habit and behavior design tools and design thinking tools, I'm also fundraising. And I was coaching women on the side a little bit as part of my executive coach certification. You have to do a certain number of hours.
What kind of executive coaching were you doing? So, because there's different levels.
Yeah. So I was doing some leadership development. I was doing some transition work. And then I was doing some life coaching work. I was really interested in coaching women around moments of deep vulnerability in their lives. So I was coaching women around online dating and infertility and divorce and just these moments where they felt like all of their stuff was kind of coming up. And I had a day where I sort of sat back and I said, what is my moment like that? Like, what's my moment in my life where all my stuff gets activated? And I realized it was fundraising. And it was a huge aha. And I started to take these tools that I was using with these women in other elements of their life, and I started to apply them to my own fundraising work. And the results were unbelievable. I mean, I had left that $3 million organization, gone back to another organization that was $1 million to grow it, ended up, once I really tapped into this, growing that to 3.5 million with way less time per week, I think is one of the most interesting things about that, because it just shifted the way that I showed up. And then I felt like I had found this secret and there was no alternative other than to share it. And so that is eventually what sort of started my business journey coaching initially folks one-on-one. And then during COVID, I offered a little free training. When COVID first hit, everyone was offering free concerts, free trainings, trying to figure out how they could help their community.
Absolutely.
And I was like, okay, here, how can I show up right now for people? I ended up offering a fearless fundraising training. It was just a little blurb. It wasn't even on my website. It was like some Google form sign up. I posted it in one Facebook group. I thought, I'll just coach 8 or 10 people who show up, try to help them get over some of the paralysis they're feeling right now. This was Friday. I remember I posted this on Friday for a training on Monday at noon. What was I thinking? I had an 11-month-old. I went to bed. I woke up, 180 people had signed up.
Oh my gosh, that's like every solopreneur's dream and nightmare at the same time, right?
Yes, but I was like, okay, this is like hitting a nerve. Like people are ready to talk about the fears and discomfort and vulnerability that comes up in fundraising. And that really, my business was really born out of that moment. And it's been a wild and really exciting ride since.
Well, and what I love about your story, in the startup world, we're always talking about proving our minimum viable product, right? You got this training and the dots started connecting. You're like, right? And then you went to another organization and you practiced. You proved your value proposition by being able to say, okay, let me try it on this $1 million organization. What can I raise them up to? How can I make this fundraising experience meaningful? And how can I prove some of these thoughts that I've had and connecting the dots? So I just say, folks, right now I'm having an Andelicious moment over that. What a beautiful way for a solopreneur, right? To practice what they want to bring to market. And then you hung out a quick shingle of a funnel opportunity thinking like, many people would be like, God, if I had 8 or 10 show up, that's a win, right? And then you wake up and you're like, what the fundraising?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So you're sitting there going, okay, 189. So now you had to hustle because you had to say, okay, I'm going to do this quick training and it's for free. But I'm going to want to get some information and maybe have them in my funnel. How did you manage that portion?
Oh, well, I spent all weekend. I started a Stripe account. I had my own Wix website at that point. I was like building a website all weekend. I remember we had our daughter and no childcare, obviously, and it was the weekend. And I spent the entire weekend being like, how does one set up a business like this? And I got all these tools really quickly. I made a billion mistakes. I wrote the webinar because that was the other thing. I thought I was going to group coach and it was going to be really casual. And then when there were 180 people, I was like, oh, this needs a really different framework. And so I ended up creating my first ever webinar without knowing really anything about webinars, but my background is in education. So I know how to teach. And so,
Perfect.
it just kind of came. I signed up for a Zoom account. I was like, where do I bring people together?
I know, exactly. And folks tuning in, you know this, right? You've been there before and people say, oh, you ought to do something with that idea. Okay. Yeah. And the next minute, it's the potential customers moving you forward because all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, just in time. Just in time website, just in time training, just in time webinar, and so, but what were your results from that? Because 189, you started looking at it and said, okay, so if I wanted to nurture this group, what were you looking for as a percentage or a number that would come out of that you could then nurture and start getting them ready to become a client?
Well, so at that point, my work was really sort of one-on-one and bigger retainers. So I didn't need a very high conversion rate. And so I will say, I don't think I had a clear strategy. I actually, you know what my strategy was? I was like, I'm going to provide as much value as I possibly can in 60 minutes so that people realize what they got for free in 60 minutes with me, they're going to want to investigate what it could look like to work together more. And
Right.
so I think I had an invitation to discovery sessions at the end of that. And it ended up being a really successful funnel. It wasn't like 60 people booked discovery sessions, but I had a pretty high close rate on my discovery sessions. And I think probably from every webinar where there were 50 people who ultimately came live, there were maybe 3 or 4 discovery sessions. I was closing anywhere from 75% to 100%. And so my one-on-one business actually filled up really quickly.
Excellent.
And then it was like, okay, this isn't scalable past this point. Like, here's what max looks like. And so that sort of led to the next
And how did
version.
you know something like even the word scalable? How did you know that you were, because a lot of people stay in the one-on-one coaching, and even though they might hear, time and it's not, you can't really leverage that. And folks, if you just want to stay in one-on-one coaching, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what success looks like for you. You know what that looks like for you. And it might be sticking on a nice, easy one-on-one schedule. And you're not looking for a ton of money, but if you are looking to branch out into more of a 6-figure income, you do have to scale. So how did you make that transition? I also you've shared some wonderful information on how you had to quickly, through fire, become an owner. Because, a lot of time we have a nice little segue from going from being an employee, someone's been hired by a company to, provide a service, to actually being the owner of the business. Did you notice that? Did you even have time to think about that? It was more like, get that webinar, get this done, get that done.
Yeah, I would say so I was still 25 hours a week in my fundraising role also.
So this was still a side hustle.
It was.
Sweet.
Yes, because I didn't want to leave that role because everybody was worried about fundraising, and I didn't want to leave the organization high and dry at a vulnerable moment. So I wanted to stay and sort of continue ensuring that they were going to meet their budget goals. So I was doing this, on the side with no childcare for 5 months. So I would say that there was no even brain capacity to think so far in advance, which it was incredibly hard. And in hindsight, I think it was a blessing because I didn't overthink things.
Exactly.
I just sort of took the next best action.
And Mallory, this is so beautiful because a lot of people plan really hard for what happened to you. Which is, you were like, and you are a brilliant problem solver. You're a creative hustler. And you were there like, well, how could I serve folks during this time? Thinking that you wanted to sort of, maybe try and stay a little busy and serve the world at the same time, but you didn't think this was going to happen. Meanwhile, folks plan 5-6 months out for an event, like 189, of which 50 people showed up. And then you had that closing rate. And, a lot of times we tend to, in the startup industry, we tend to find a little niche that we want to go into. You just sort of threw it out there and said, I don't care what you're raising money for, or, this is just to help you be less afraid when you do, especially during these times. And here's a way I have figured it out. How did you tighten that up when you decided to scale? Talk a little bit about what that looked like. What did scaling look like? And did you become a little more focused on a particular niche in the fundraising world? Please share.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. I would say, first of all, back to your original question around why did I even scale, or why did I want to scale? I think for me, because this didn't start as a goal of building a business, like it didn't start with a entrepreneurial goal. It started with an impact goal. My goal was to get this message out to as many people as possible, to get this framework out to as many people as possible, because I felt like this was what I needed, 13 years prior, right? That this would have changed the trajectory of my life, the trajectory of those organizations. And so when I felt like I had this thing that would have, not only changed how much money I could raise, but would have changed my experience as a fundraiser. And I was watching so many fundraisers burning out and, feeling anxious and filled with self-doubt. I was like, for me, the goal was reaching as many people as possible. And so scaling was the only option, not just from a financial perspective, but because I really viewed my impact in my work through the lens of how many people get access to this. And I think about that a lot. Like my goal is that, 20% of my time is spent on paid opportunities and 80% is spent on free resources to the nonprofit community. And so it's not that I'm trying to build the business from a revenue perspective year over year. I'm pretty stable where I'm at right now. It's more about impact and how many people I'm reaching. And I would say, like, in terms of the niche, it's not, people always ask, like, what's the size of the nonprofit that you work for? What's the age of, and to me, that is actually not what's important. My niche are people who feel uncomfortable fundraising, who feel like they have resistance to fundraising that they don't know how to overcome, and they don't know how to position their nonprofit as a true offer, to sit down at a table with a funder and say, we are equals and we each have assets. Your assets might be related to the money that you have. My assets are related to the organization and all the assets of my organization, which are incredibly valuable. And is there something that we want to do together because we share this goal or we share this North Star? And that's just such a fundamentally different conversation than what we typically see in the sector. And so I would say, like, my niche are the people who want to have those conversations, who want to feel that way as a fundraiser, and who just feel this resistance or paralysis around their fundraising, and want tools to overcome that.
Okay, everybody. I just have to bring out the clappers. All right. Learning moment for all. Oh my gosh, folks. Did you see how Mallory just laid that out? That just didn't happen naturally. Yes, she's a teacher, but she has this information in her brain. And I'm sure that you have said it enough times that it's always there. Founders, take note, because that's what happens when you pull it together like that. Thank you, Mallory. And I want to remind folks right now that you can learn how to raise more from the right funders without obnoxiously hounding them by visiting malloryerickson.com/free. This link will be in the show notes. Come on. You need this after what Mallory just explained. Holy mackerel, right? And Julia's like, love this. I coach drill teams, and your line of work would be so helpful for the girls on the team. Yeah, see, there you go. It's that process. And also, thank you, Julia, for, yes, Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership, everybody, going back to earlier, 20 years. They've been around really doing wonderful things for entrepreneurs. So now that you've brilliantly laid out just how you came to understand your niche, and folks, it's kind of like the Maya Angelou quote, right, Mallory, where she talks about people don't remember what you did or what you gave, or they remember how you made them feel. And so I feel like you have identified that brand promise. And folks, a brand promise is how you promise folks will feel by engaging with you. And you are consistent. And so, Mallory, what you have just done is just exquisitely conveyed not only your customer segment and how you serve your customers, who they are, their psychographic, but you also talked about how you want to help them feel, so that you can transition them out of what they have probably had a mythology about for years, right, around fundraising, to actually, how do I do this where I feel in partnership with the folks? And how do I find those folks who are aligned with our mission? I just love that, something fierce. And speaking of loving something fierce, our fab, marvelous Mia Voss is swinging by to say hello. Hello, Mia. So happy you're here. Mia's the reason I know Mallory. And while I have Mia here, everybody, I'm a huge fan of the Shit We Don't Talk About with Mia Voss podcast, which Mallory is how I found about you on. And it's a tremendous podcast. If you're not listening to it, get on Apple Podcasts, get on Spotify. There's a QR code or you can go to shitwedon'ttalkabout.com to learn more seriously. I know you moms are out there waiting in line to pick up your kids. This is when you want to listen to the show or doing laundry as well. Right, Mallory?
Yes, it's such a good show. Hi, Mia. It's so good to see you here. And yes, everyone go click subscribe to that show. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful too that I had an opportunity to be on your podcast as well, Mallory, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I really want to understand more about how you came to this understanding that it was how you wanted to help people feel, and that you knew that that was going to be your customer segment, and how that works. Because I really want to dive deeper into your business, how you're serving folks. And you just did a wonderful job laying it out, but let's go a little deeper. How do you get somebody on board? How do you work with them? At MalloryErickson.com.
Yeah. So right now, after my one-on-ones filled up really quickly, I basically had a moment where I was like, okay, what does it look like to scale this? And I also, for other neurodivergent founders out there, I have ADHD. And so I felt like a lot of the things that I had seen or had been sort of promoted through the social media algorithms for ways to scale or grow a business involved a lot of live launching. And so I thought, I knew I wanted to build a course, but I really didn't think I could manage a launch with my daughter and daycare inconsistencies, with COVID, with my own sort of management of all these things. But I thought I could really build a course, a self-guided course that could help people move through the fundraising process that I was working one-on-one with folks around. So I ended up finding some resources around evergreen course sales, like how to sell a course evergreen. And so I signed up for a class to learn how to create a webinar that would ultimately sell your course. And in the creation of the webinar, I hadn't built the course. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to do the sales process before building the actual course, but it was wildly helpful, because what happened was, in the building of the webinar, the framework of the webinar actually influenced the framework of the course, and the process of learning from, clients or potential clients that I did to build the sales process, a process I had never built before. I had never written a sales page. I had never written, any of these things. I'd never built a webinar with a formula, that was intended to sell. And learning all of those things and the conversations I was having with people taught me so much about what was needed in terms of the course. And this is kind of a crazy thing to say publicly, but I'm just going to say it. Really, the way the course came to be is that for 3 months, I had this feeling that, when you have a word on the tip of your tongue, or you're like, it's just a little bit past what I have access to in my brain, but like something's there. I actually had about 3 months of that feeling. It was driving me a little bit bananas, but I was just like, God, there's something there, but I can't reach it. I can't access it. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden the course just came out. I sat down, I went away by myself to a little Airbnb for 2 or 3 days. I sat down, I started just talking to a camera. And in 2 days, I built the entire course.
Oh my gosh, Mallory. Oh my gosh. Divine inspiration.
Yeah, it was a really remarkable sort of creative process. And so then the course was built, and I had to figure out all the other things, like pricing, and selling to the nonprofit market is really complicated for a number of different reasons. And I was following this formula that I was being taught by someone who was not teaching people how to market to the nonprofit audience. So I launched Power Partners January 2021, and it bombed. The sales process, the webinar format, all the things that work for other audiences don't work for the nonprofit audience. And they don't feel as genuine. And I made the mistake. What's so interesting is that I made the mistake that so many fundraisers make when they're fundraising, where I just followed this sort of like best practice, without taking time. It didn't feel right to me, but I was like, well, I don't know anything about marketing and I don't know anything about sales. So I'm just going to follow this prescriptive thing instead of really like listening to myself and my intuition and adapting things to what I knew to be true about fundraisers and nonprofit leaders. So ultimately the launch of it was a bit of a disaster.
Crickets.
Yep. And then actually worse than crickets, trolling, angry emails, really some of the hardest days of my life.
And I just want to say something real quickly too, Mallory, especially when you went and you had that magical God winks moment, and you created this course and it just flowed out of you and it felt so good. And you're like, I am on my joyful purpose. And then you get there and all of a sudden, what do you mean there's crickets? But it's these contrast moments, founders, when you pull on threads. That's why you always have to pull on threads and you have to take action, because it's doing that helps you go, well, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? And because you're founders, you're into solving that problem. So Mallory, how did you solve that problem once you realized what you didn't work? And folks, of course you want to just go with somebody's blueprint. Of course you don't want to do the hard work of finding out what's right for your situation, because it's just like, if I just press that button, this will happen. Okay, great, I'll do it.
Yeah. And because it's so hard to know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And I felt like what I didn't know was how to tinker with it. I didn't know how to change things and still keep the effectiveness without all the sort of typical sales tactics. So basically, when I had that happen, I was like, okay, the reality is nobody knows how to teach this to nonprofit audiences. So I'm going to learn. And I was like, I had this other webinar last year that people went wild for. And while it didn't sell a course, it led to a really healthy sales funnel. So I ended up, I think I iterated on that webinar. I took a step back. I wrote the webinar that I wanted to write. And I used some of the same framework, but I really recentered value in the webinar. Because the thing that you're taught a lot in sale, or I had been taught a lot through this course, was don't give too much away on the webinar because then people won't buy their course. And I just sort of lost track of the fact that my goal was to have an impact on as many people as possible. Some of those were going to ultimately be paying clients, but I wanted even my marketing to positively impact my audience. And so I was like, wait a second. No, I actually want to give a lot away on this webinar because I want people, if they don't need the course and they can just take the framework and do it themselves, amazing. That's still important to me. And so that link that you shared, the MalloryErickson.com/free, that is the current webinar. It is totally value-based. I give you the entire Power Partners blueprint. And then if you want to join the course, you can do that at the end. But it's not some teaser webinar where all the values in the course and all of that stuff. It's it's an amazing class that you're going to learn so much in. And then if you want to become a part of the program, it's available for you if you want it. And so I iterated on that webinar, I would say 50 plus times. I ran that webinar live 50 plus times, and watched everything from when did people drop off the webinar? How many people stayed to the end? What was happening when I'd see a dip? I really did a ton of data collection on people's experience. When did they respond to what happened if I put a poll here? What happened if I did this thing here? And I played and played and played, and I really had fun, I would say, in that play process too. And ultimately it resulted in what it is today. That's the primary way to join Power Partners. Although I just, as of about 2 months ago, started to let people join straight from my website without watching the webinar, because I now teach in so many places that folks are often ready to join after that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I just have to celebrate the founder journey for a moment, everyone. Oh yeah, some extra woohoos on that one for sure. Come on. See, and this is what founders can do so well is to not, you can feel a moment of discouragement, but because you went back to your core value, which was to have an impact, and you looked at what someone was teaching you and said, no, that as much as people say this is proven and this happens, no. So founders, remember that you're going to get so much advice in your founder journey life, in your startup life from so many folks. You stay on purpose. Okay. You can take some of it you can file under T for trash, but remember, you know your business better than anyone. And investors and advisors are going to come in and, with well-intentioned or not, are going to try to influence you as a founder. So listen to your heart and then do the testing. Oh my gosh, Mallory, nothing makes my heart go pitter patter like someone who's grabbing data. I mean, that is such a turn on for me. Because folks, look, does the poll go here? How do people respond? I mean, I don't know what the tool is that you're using, but if you get something that gives you that feedback for different parts of what you're teaching, holy mackerel, that's tremendous. And then you get the wow feeling of having served your people and meeting your value. And folks, your business needs to serve you. Okay. Period. End of story. So now you have that great feeling of seeing the impact because you were able to switch that. Yeah. Mia says data collection equals love language. Yes. And right. And scalable looks, Ruth is saying, if you want your business to grow, it's good to be scalable. Find a pathway to scalable so that you can make money when you're sleeping. That is how generational wealth happens in different ways. But, to know what that looks like for you is so important. And I know, Mia, I love hearing about this journey. So smart in that data collection. And that's, how you can still have the touchy-feely and important, bonding moment, so to speak, with your customers, but also go, this is what they're thinking. I love that. And then when you hung out when you actually went full time, I believe it was January 2021. Is that what you said? And you were funding this because you'd already started having clients so you were bootstrapping. Great. And so when did you decide to launch your phenomenal podcast? What the Fundraising? Oh my gosh.
So that launched in July of 2021. I think I launched it on my daughter's birthday. I have this weird habit of wanting to synchronize personal milestones and professional milestones because I don't know, something about that always feels really sweet to me. And I did it because so Power Partners is essentially the combination of fundraising strategy with executive coaching tools, with habit and design tools, and through design thinking using design thinking frameworks. And so it is this really collaboration of a lot of elements that are typically outside the nonprofit sector, right? Oftentimes when we think about strategy, we really just think about sort of one cognitive process, right? Or sort of a template, some strategic plan template or fundraising plan template. And what I had found in my own work and through all of this was that, what is on that plan is like this tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of how effective you're going to be on fundraising, because you can have the most beautiful fundraising plan in the world. But if you're held back from sending those emails because you're scared of you're sending this email too close to when you sent some other email, then it doesn't matter how good that plan is, right? Like I'll often say things like, the fundraising plan is the screenplay, but the thoughts and the beliefs in your head, that's the director. And you can have the best screenplay in the world, but if the thoughts and the beliefs and the habits and all of those things are not tuned appropriately for the task that you're doing, it doesn't really matter how good that screenplay is. And I find that fundraising fear is that thing, right? It's like, that's the thing. And if we can actually remove the resistance, remove the fear, have those tools, then that's what's ultimately going to allow people, to take action, to continue to get over the action line and see that impact. And so for me, I was constantly learning about new research in psychology, research about motivation, research about influence, research about the inner dialogue in our head, different somatic healing practices, because all of those things are tools to overcome fear. And I said to my husband one day, I said, gosh, I'm having so many amazing conversations with people that are just mind blowing and they're teaching me so much. And I wish I could share them with my audience somehow. And he was like, honey,
it's called a podcast.
a podcast. But I'm not a podcast listener. I don't learn auditory. Yeah, I'm not. And so I never thought about it in that way, and which has also actually been a really cool and incredible experience to create something really for my people and with their feedback and with their input. And I can't say what would I want because I don't listen to podcasts.
Right.
So it's been this actually like really awesome experience to figure out how to show up for my community in amazing ways. And the guests like you have been amazing. And I've learned so much. My number one strength finder is learner. And I had really lost that in my entrepreneurial journey. I really felt like I didn't have the space. I was learning on the go, but I wasn't
Well, clearly, when you way back in the day when you went from executive director down to 25 hours a week, that you went off, it took 2 classes.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, what happened to the 25 hours a week? I was burned out. No. That's your almost like your love language is to be constantly learning.
Yes.
And I can say, Mallory, as someone who's watched listened to your fund, well, and also watched because you do a video portion of it. Everyone is like over the moon excited to come on and talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you're so excited. And because again, the beauty of nonprofit folks is they're solving some serious problems in the world. You know, you can get really excited and hopeful listening to what the fundraising. So notes are in the show notes. You'll see the links. I think I shared a quick link here as well. You know, hop on over to Instagram, or you can go to Mallory's website. She has all that information there. It is so powerful. So while you don't learn auditorial, your audience does.
Yeah.
And you ask, and because you're such a curious soul, you ask great questions.
Well, the conversations I love, and I learned so much. And I said to somebody recently that even if nobody listened to the podcast, I would still do it because the conversations teach me so much. I get so much energy. It refines my work in so many ways. And so it's my favorite.
Yeah, 100%. And also I am sure you do what happens. The good fortune that I have as well is to coach your guest, you know, as they're going through, you're able to add a nugget, or in the case here of the Startup Life Live Show, be able to coach from, quote, the stage with the wonderful learning opportunities that come from these conversations. So folks, honest to goodness, it doesn't cost but hardly a thing, a dinner out, to launch a podcast. And you can, find these sites that will host you. It'll shoot it out to the various platforms for podcasting. And you can do audio, you can do Zoom and download the audio. As long as you have good audio, you can do a podcast. And it really does up your game in so many ways, right? And Ruth, I love what you're saying here. Thoughts, beliefs, and habits should be tuned correctly to back up the fundraising of your startup. Nice capture there, Ruth. Thank you for that. I love that. So this entrepreneurship journey that you've been on, right? Oh my gosh, you have learned so much and you've shared so many nuggets with us. But, we all know that we always win, folks, when we launch a business. Entrepreneurship is the best. And so when you look back on your journey over the last 3 years as you went from side hustle into full time, what has this journey taught you about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Oh, wow. We probably need a whole other hour. But, I think, gosh, what are some of the key things that I've learned about myself? I mean, I think one of the things that I have really, come to understand in a deeper way is about, I think sometimes in entrepreneurship, especially solopreneurship,
Mhm.
you are both the cart and the horse. And that has been a unexpected challenge for me. Like to, in a lot of my roles in nonprofit, I was the number two. So even when I was leading an organization, I was second to a really powerful and influential board chair. And in my other role as managing director, I had been under an executive director who had founded the organization. And so they were the bigger visionary and I was the implementer. I made it happen and I really managed between the vision and the operations and all of those things. So I never thought of myself so much as a visionary. And that's why I said before, like how I never for a long time didn't really, identify as an entrepreneur in that way, because I didn't see those qualities in myself. But of course, having the space to be an entrepreneur, I became a visionary. And what I didn't expect about that was that what it was going to be like to be both the horse and the cart, right? And so sometimes I would get so excited about an idea and I would start to move that from a visionary place and really underestimated what it was going to take to move the cart. And so I think that's been a big thing. The other thing is what I shared before around sort of the accidental nature of the initial business growth, the speed, the, kind of committing that I'm going to do something publicly before having it all lined up on the back end. That actually has turned into one of my number one strategies in my business to keep myself out of overthinking, is to make a public declaration with a date of something that I'm going to do that I have not yet done. And I always rise to the challenge. And I joke with my husband that I am like air. I will take up as much space as I'm given, right? So and that goes for the way I pack my suitcases to the way I run my business. And so I just know that I could spend a month planning something. I could spend 6 months planning something and I'll take it. But I can spend 2 weeks planning it too. And so what does it look like? And what does that then require me to prioritize when I do something like that? And I think as hard as prioritization is, forcing myself around the rigor of prioritization has been a huge learning journey and just something that's been important for me.
And for every founder, thank you for those incredible nuggets and insights into your journey. Because folks, this entrepreneurship journey that we're all on, it really serves so many different areas of your heart and soul. And I will never forget the horse and cart analogy, and we'll be using that from now on. I want to thank you, Mallory Erickson, for forever. And folks, tuning in, what I'm going to be grabbing that everywhere I go. Oh my gosh. It's so true, because you have to oh, it's a great idea. Well, who's going to implement that?
Still me.
Well, let me put my different tiara on. Okay. And I know that you have struggled during these tough times and you've taken a lot of courses that have helped you. But, founders, we all struggle with this journey. There's so much glorification of entrepreneurship. And I'm certainly one to, toot the horn, of course, because I always feel that we always win no matter what happens. But at the same time, we have really tough days. As one of our prior guests said, Mallory, he said, this first 6 hours of yesterday were awful. And then the last 3 were amazing. When you have had those tough days and you just want to go and take a nap with your daughter and snuggle up with her and just forget that this is what you're doing or supposed to be doing, how do you shift your mindset? What, can we learn from how you have been able to navigate those days where it's just hashtag why bother?
Well, this might be some funny advice, but I give myself the opportunity to quit. And sometimes I've been able to do this by myself, but for me, choice is what shifts my energy, feeling a sense of choice. And I think when I have those really bad days, which I have plenty of them, my eyes are probably still puffy from the one I had yesterday. And I have them all the time. And I think what makes them harder or worse is when I feel trapped in that reality. And so for me, the biggest way to shift out of it is to remember that I do have a choice. And I agree with you. I think, I said to my husband last night when I had this really bad day, and I'm not shutting down my business, but I said to him, I said, even if I did, I wouldn't feel like a failure. This has been such an amazing journey and, all those things. And so because I think I believe that, and because I consistently give myself the choice to not go on if I don't want to, I feel re-empowered and re-inspired in the work that I'm doing because I feel like I'm choosing it every day, and that even one time I had a really, really hard day. I mean, really the day I was like, this is it, man. And I called my friend who's a coach also, who's been trying to get me over to this Fortune 500 company to coach internally for a long time. And I called him up and I said, blank, I need your help. I'm having a really hard day. I need you to offer me that job you keep offering me. I need you to just do it. Like, give me the pitch, offer it. And I think he knew what was sort of going on, but so he pitched it, made the offer. And I was like, no, thank you. Okay. And just that moment of like, no, like this is what I want. Even on these really horrible days, this is why I'm on this planet. This is why I'm doing the work I'm doing, and reminding myself of that in really actionable, empowering ways helps me shift.
You know what's coming up now, everybody? Oh yeah, stitch that on a pillow. Choice shifts energy. Oh my gosh, give yourself permission to quit because it will really help you see why you're doing this. I wrote a post, in fact, I took a Lady Gaga song, Million Reasons to Walk Away. And I said, what's that one reason that you're going to stay with your business? And it's so powerful. Thank you for that amazing, amazing insight, because I'm just going to say it again. Choice shifts energy, folks. So when you say, okay, I can quit, this doesn't have to be it, because you're going to take all this incredible skill set that you have learned. Nobody can take away what's between your ears, and you can apply it to anything in your life. You can go ahead and take it to that Fortune 500 company. You will never lose with entrepreneurship. But that gave you, okay, yeah, I'm in it to win it with this because I get so much out of this. And folks, it's also really okay to quit. Seth Godin has a wonderful book called The Dip. Read it, right?
I love it.
It's so good because it says, hey, your energy might be better off being directed in another place now. So stop what you're doing now and shift. It's okay, because choice shifts energy. Oh my gosh, horse cart, choice shifts energy. I'm coming out with all these gems from our conversation today. Mallory, what hard thing are you working on right now with your business that the Startup Life Live community could add wind to your sails or open doors for you and your incredible, impactful work in the world?
Oh my gosh, that is so generous. I would say one thing that I am, trying to figure out is how to move into more live speaking opportunities. I've done a tremendous amount of virtual speaking because my work really exploded during COVID, but I'm not on the live speaking circuit yet. So if you have, whether it's for your organization or, conference leaders in the nonprofit space, or really anywhere where folks are building aligned partnerships, or there's a sort of female empowerment component of it around money and worth and value, those are all my sweet spots. And I would love introductions or to be considered.
Oh my gosh, we will do that for you. I've already got a few organizations I'll be going, yoo-hoo, Mallory, horse cart.
Thank you.
Listen to these segments. Oh my gosh. Okay, so before I pop you into the green room, any last thoughts for everybody before we wrap up this wonderful episode with you, Mallory?
I just want to say that moving money is a really powerful and really important work, whether that's a startup, whether that's a nonprofit. I think we often feel like in conversations about money, when we're asking for it, whether it's a sales call or a fundraising meeting, we feel sort of less than in that moment because we have this perception of this power dynamic that money is the thing with power. And so the person with money has the power, and that puts us in this sort of uncomfortable dynamic. And I think what's so important for people to recognize is what sacred and important work it is to move money towards the world that we ultimately want to see built, whether that's through the solution that your startup is solving or the work your nonprofit is doing. The work itself is important. The product itself is important. And equally as important is the movement of money towards those things, because money is energy. And that is the movement of energy towards that work, attention and focus. All of those things come with the movement of money. And so I just think about, money movers are sacred and critical people. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you all do in doing that. And I hope you feel proud of the work that you're doing.
Oh, gosh. I've got tears in my eyes. That is so powerful and empowering, Mallory. Okay, who wouldn't want to work with Mallory? Come on. Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here with tears streaming down my face from that. I know you are too, viewers and listeners. That really, I'm going to be using that as my soundbite for the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mallory. I just love knowing you. I love knowing you're out there and that you're helping folks move money to where it needs to go, and that you really honor that sacred journey and that sacred role that people have, whether you're fundraising capital folks or fundraising from funders who will help your nonprofit. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mallory.
Oh, I feel the same about you. And thank you for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
Oh my gosh, pure deliciousness, everyone. Well, I've got a whole new repertoire of vocab words I'll be using on the show, but you can see my eyes are still like, I'm looking at myself going, pull back the tears, Ande. That was so beautiful. So grateful that Mallory shared her glow and her essence, but also her brilliance and her founder journey with us today. Let me share with you who's coming up next. Someone else who's serving the world in a very unique way. And this is Lauren Saltz, and she's the founder and CEO of Sealed. And here's the scoop with Sealed. It is a clean tech company that's on a mission to make homes healthy, comfortable, and clean for the planet. And I'm telling you, they will finance, they will do everything they can to get you off fossil fuel and into clean tech. And this April, they expanded their Series B fundraise to over 85 million to accelerate their efforts. It's a climate crisis, folks, and we need to quickly shift from fossil fuels to clean energy for our homes. Oh my gosh, we're going to learn a lot from Lauren's journey. And I am truly grateful that you chose to tune in and up your founder game and spend a little time with me and our wonderful guest today, the phenomenal Mallory Erickson. Remember to receive an alert whenever I post a new show. Be sure to join the meetup group, the Startup Life Live meetup group. Links are in the show notes. For you podcast listeners, if you loved what you heard today, I'd appreciate a rating, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you could share that love, that will help us reach more folks. Remember always that you've got this, that you are on the best of journeys. Entrepreneurship is a phenomenal way to grow who you are and who you be in the world, and you will always win from this adventure. Until I see you next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. To all of you for your founder journey. Cheers.